Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited to talk about private versus public companies. Now, have you ever started thinking to yourself, if hey, do I start a public company? Do I start a private company? And there are several other different forms of ownership. There are personal liability companies. I don't know if you've seen companies that end with the letters INC, Inc. Those are personal liability companies, cooperatives, closed corporations. But today I'm going to be talking about private and public companies. Now, the huge difference between public and private companies is the fact that public companies are registered companies. They are registered to offer their general stock to the public, whereas private companies do not offer their general stock to the public. Instead, they just issue shares to their shareholders. And that's mainly how they're able to raise capital, right? So what does this mean? Usually when you go on the the stock exchange market, you can see Netflix. Netflix is a public company. They offer their stock, their general stock to the public for other people to buy, for other people to buy their stock, to make biddings, whereas private companies don't do such. You guys can think of all the examples of private companies. You won't see them on the stock exchange market because that's not what they do. Now, public companies, you just need a minimum of one shareholder, and you just need one or more. You need a minimum of one or more owners, and you need one shareholder. That's it. That's all you need to start, right? What else? In public company, that's for public companies, right? With private companies, it's the same thing. You need one or more. You need two or more owners, actually. You also need shareholders. Now, a lot of people might be wondering, oh, how do you get shareholders? Well, that's for another video. I'll explain how you get shareholders and all of that. But today I'm going to be just talking about the general, when it comes to it. So both public companies and private companies are very similar, but I just explained the difference. Now, why would it be a good thing to not offer your general stock to the public? Well, firstly, you will be at risk of a hostile takeover, you will be at risk. And firstly, there are no IPOs that are involved. You know what an IPO is? It is an initial the initial offering of a company's stock to the public. So when they first announce, hey, we are opening and we are first going to open, this is the very first time we're offering our stock exchange to the public, that's when they have like an IPO. That's what an IPO is, right? So an IPO is usually a good way for a new company who's just entering the market and who's just trying to raise capital. This is how they raise capital. During an IPO, they usually outlay the details on the company, what the company is, what products they provide, everything like that. And that is also in a prospectus. Now, the disadvantage to this is that other companies can use this to their advantage. If they see all the information about a company, they can use that in their strategy for competition against your company, which is not a good thing, right? It's not a good thing. Whereas private companies are more protected. They don't have IPOs where it's the first time of offering the stock to the public. They don't do that. That's not what they do, right? How they raise capital is they issue it to shareholders. Public companies also issue shares to the shareholders, but with private companies, that is the way that they usually raise capital. Whereas in public companies, it's a lot easier to raise capital because there are several ways, but at the same time, it's a long process getting a prospectus out into the public. So yes, that's more formalities that you need to a lot more money, because public companies also need to get their annual financial statements audited for the public and for their shareholders. So that's more money. It's very expensive and it's very complicated, right? Whereas private companies, it's less complicated, right? You don't need, your annual financial statements do not need to be audited so that the public can see it and so that the shareholders can see it. It's not like that. They don't have to do stuff like that. But yes, so basically the main advantages of a public company, they get to offer their general stock to the public, which makes it easier for them to raise capital. It makes it easier for them to raise capital. It makes it easier for them to also just get that publicity, So when they're launching their IPO, that is a lot of publicity that comes with that. Whereas private companies, they're more protected. They don't have any IPOs. They don't have a prospectus, but it's also a good way where they can stay protected against hostile takeovers, where a company can start buying shares of another company continuously until they have controlling interests, and they actually have controlling interest in the directors. So now the voting and all the decisions that will now be taking place will be that of the company until that other company literally just takes it over. So that is a very huge disadvantage, and other people can use the prospectus, everything that is laid out in the prospectus, to their advantage if they are competing with that company. So it really depends on what you want, depends on what you want. It really depends on what you want. If you want more publicity, an easier way to raise money for your company, if you want but considering all of that, easier way to raise capital, easier way to get more traction, it's very easy to raise capital, right? But it's very complicated formalities. Prospectus has to be drawn up. On top of that, you're at risk of a hostile takeover. Private companies are more protected, more secure, no complicated. You don't need a prospectus or AGMs. Okay, annual general meetings have to be held, but there's a lot that you don't need to do. But the only way they raise capital is issuing shares to shareholders, and the more shareholders you have in a company, the less share you're going to get in your dividend. So yeah, that's basically the main advantages. You have to go and pick and choose on which one is best suited for you. Until next time, I'll see you.